Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, growing public anger in Canada over scores of missing and murdered Aboriginal women. Also, the Kurdish mayor who's watching her Turkish border town turn into a refugee camp. And across the border, the Kurdish women fighters who are risking their lives in order to stay free. But we begin in Canada, where a shocking report published last May revealed nearly 1,200 Aboriginal women have gone missing or were murdered in the last 30 years. Yet despite calls from a human rights group and even a UN representative, the government has yet to back a national inquiry. Our France 24 team on the ground sent us through this report.
It's been 6 years since Lori Ojic last had news of her daughter. 16-year-old Maisie and her friend Shannon spent the weekend together in a small town beside Kittigan-Zibi. The reserve 300 kilometres from Montreal is where Lori and her family live. Like any adolescent, her daughter went out to see her girlfriend. They both disappeared. For 6 months, police believed they'd run away. Lori couldn't accept that conclusion. She'd left everything behind: paperwork, money, clothing.
It's hard because nothing was done for my daughter. I'm going to keep saying it because it wasn't. Fill out a form here. That's what I got when the police came to my door to help make me fill out a report. Fill this out, here you go, and they were gone. And that was all that was done.
A cursory investigation led nowhere. Maisie and Shannon's case isn't unique in Aboriginal communities. Lori Ojic is convinced little was done for these women, specifically because they're Aboriginal.
I never used to look at it that way, but of everything that our family has been through and listening to other family stories, I believe it. I believe that if this was a report of other women besides Native women, it would be a big issue.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police recently revealed 1,181 women have gone missing or been murdered in the last 30 years, a rate at least 4 times higher than that of all other women. It's a trend that has deep roots.
Racism, misogyny, colonialism, it's clear that all these factors are present in many of society's institutions: police, law, the population, as well as economic and social rights. We agree that these women are more vulnerable, but they're even more vulnerable because they are poor, because they're Aboriginal, and because they're women.
The case of Tina Fontaine sparked a much wider reaction. Just 15 years old, she was found dead in a river in Winnipeg in August. Both the public and politicians were outraged. Aboriginal women have been trying to draw attention to the tragedy of these deaths and disappearances for a decade, with little concrete result. What they want now is a national inquiry.
We talk about key players, we talk about families, we talk about the judicial system. What has worked? Why doesn't it work?
For now, the Canadian government continues to insist the problem is not sociological, but criminal in nature, and refuses to hold a national inquiry. Authorities have unveiled a $25 million action plan aimed at raising awareness about safety and supporting victims, something Canada's Aboriginal women fear doesn't go far enough.
Now, in other news, a doctor who conducted sterilisation procedures resulting in the deaths of at least 13 women in central India has been arrested. He's been accused of using contaminated post-surgery drugs and equipment. The women, among more than 80 to undergo surgery, fell ill at a so-called family planning camp in a village in the central state of Chhattisgarh. Such surgery clinics are held regularly in the country as part of the government's efforts to control its booming population. Officials say the victims showed signs of toxic shock. Now, in recent months, the world's attention has turned to the Syrian border town of Kobani as a vicious battle continues between Kurdish fighters and the Islamic State organisation. Most of the town's Kurdish population has fled across the border to Turkey and in particular to the city of Syria. Its woman mayor, who was only elected last April, has now found herself on the front line of a massive humanitarian operation. France 24's Romeo Longroy and Alex Turnbull went to meet her.
The small border town of Suruc is home to thousands of Kobani residents who fled their war-torn city.
The people here have helped us a lot. We're very grateful. They give us clothes, they helped us find shelter. We really felt welcomed.
In the last 2 months, some 60,000 refugees have settled here. 30-year-old Zuhal Ekmez was elected mayor of Suruç last April. A former chemistry teacher, she is faced with an unprecedented humanitarian crisis.
The population of Suruç has nearly doubled, and so has our workload. We haven't been able to hire more staff, and we've had to work twice as hard. We've even started working weekends.
Her teams have set up temporary camps to house dozens of Kobani families. They'll tell of the brutal treatments inflicted by the Islamic State organization.
The Islamic State group kidnapped 28 members of my family, 28 of my own relatives. They took the women and the children. We haven't heard from them since.
Since the battle began, donations have started pouring in from Turkey and abroad. The aid is stored at this warehouse owned by the town hall.
As you can see, most of the volunteers here are women. I wouldn't want to cross our male comrades. They make an effort. But more often than not, women are the ones who really get involved here and at the refugee camps.
Many of them volunteered after Kurdish authorities in Syria started developing a model for gender equality.
The revolution in Kobani is a women's revolution. Women in Turkey and elsewhere have understood this and have expressed their sympathy for Kobani. When the Islamic State group attacked the city, what they wanted also was to do away with women's rights.
Back at Zuhal's office, the TV is tuned into the local news channel, with reports from inside Kobani playing on a loop.
A barbed wire fence separates us, but it's the same land. We're all residents of Suruç and Kobani. We are the children of one people. Maybe we don't suffer here from terrorism, but their trauma is ours too.
Every morning, Zuhal comes into work, knowing thousands are counting on her to get them through their daily ordeal.
Now, among those taking up arms against the Islamic State organisation in northern Syria and Iraq is a group of Kurdish female fighters. It's a story that's featured in the November edition of Marie Claire France, and in partnership with the magazine, I'm joined here today in the studio by their journalist Manon Karoui, who went to meet some of the women. Now, Manon, thank you very much for joining us. Where exactly did you go in order to find these women soldiers?
We went to a city named Jalaula. It's 100 kilometers away from Baghdad on the Kurdish side of Iraq. And this city is a key access to Baghdad. And the Kurdish fighters have been fighting very hard to keep it and to take it back from the Islamic State.
Tell me about some of the women you actually met.
One I remember very well, her name is Rangin. She was 29 years old. She spent most of her life, even though she's so young, fighting. First she was fighting for the independence of Kurdish people. Then she fought with the troops of Saddam Hussein. But she says now this war is the most important war of her life.
And why is that?
Because she fights for the other women. She says Kurdistan is the last piece of freedom in this region, and she is ready to die to fight for women's right, to make sure that she doesn't end up as treated as a sexual slave like the other women. In, for example, what happened during the Sinjar attack, you know that you have more than 4,000 women now turned into sexual slaves. So she wants to make sure that's not something that's going to happen to her.
And as you write, every night IS members are taunting these women via the radio with absolutely horrific threats, aren't they?
The thing is that they are at the same time very close to the enemies and quite far because you can't see them. But on the radio at night, they can hear them, and what they tell them is like, you're a slut, and if we get you, we're going to rape you, the 25 of us, and then we cut your head and we send it to your mothers.
The reality is, Manon, isn't it, that the jihadists are far more afraid of being killed by a woman than they are a man. Why is that?
Yes, because they think if they are killed by what they call a haram person, meaning an unclean woman, they won't have access to paradise. And you know that they believe in paradise. They have many virgins waiting for them. They want to make sure they are not being killed by women.
And what about the support from other men who are fighting with them? What's the interaction like between the female and the male soldiers?
They're all soldiers, so the way they interact is really like as if they were men as well. And the woman we met also was in charge of this unit. She asked me to write down the fact that she's no more than a soldier. She doesn't pay more attention to civilians or to losing fighters because she's a woman or a mother. She wants to be treated as a soldier.
And for all of them, I mean, what do they see life after the battlefield? Where are they going to go? Do they go back to their old jobs? I mean, what future do they have?
I think they can't even figure this out now because they are really in the middle of a long and intense battle. Most of them, they don't have families, I mean, women fighter, because they...
How old are they, by and large?
Around 30, 35, but you can find even 50 years old female fighter. So they dedicated their life to war. They don't have children waiting for them home, nor they have husbands. So it's very hard for them to picture themselves doing something else than fighting.
Manon, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. And that's it for now. If you'd like to comment on what you've just seen, please head to our Facebook page, France24, the 51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and please keep those comments rolling in. Until our next program, bye for now.